Good morning to you all. So, whenever the political situation in my country gets tense, my father would usually pack a bag of clothes and essentials, and he will keep it by the door, things he will need in prison. Because for most of my life, he's been in and out of jail as a political prisoner, mainly because, he spent his entire life peacefully resisting military rule and working for human rights and democracy in my country. He was arrested for the first time in 1988 for leading a peaceful protest. And the first time I met my father was in prison when I was 4 years old. And I remember I really wanted to give him a hug, but there were iron bars between us. And again, in 2007, he was arrested for leading another peaceful protest. And this time, he served 5 years out of his 65 years prison sentence before being released. And again, he was arrested for the third time in February this year. He was one of those who was arrested on the first day of the military coup in Burma. And this time, I don't know how long he will be in prison for and when I will see him again. For people like me, who live very far away from home, we don't know when we can go home safely. If I go home now, I will be arrested for speaking out against the military. And for people living inside the country, they are trapped in a nightmare. In Burma today, there are more than 7,000 political prisoners in jail, and the youngest is 5 years old. And children of political prisoners today are not as lucky as I was. They can't visit their parents in prison like I did. And it makes me really sad and angry that so many children are now going through what I went through, not knowing when they will see their parents again or even where their parents are. And many political prisoners are being kept in an unknown location. And sometimes family members only find out what happened to their loved ones because they receive a dead bodies the next day, and often showing, signs of torture and beatings. And the world has been shocked by the appalling brutality unleashed by the Burmese military since the coup started. Peaceful protesters were shot by police and soldiers. They even shot children. And more than 1,000 people have been killed, and 250,000 people had to run away from their homes in ethnic areas because of the military attacks. So when the military introduced reforms back in 2010, governments around the world hailed this as a transition to democracy. They ignore many warning signs that the entire reform process was designed and controlled by the military to maintain their interest. Yes, we had election and the civilian government on the face of it, but the military still control the guarantee ministerial post and also appointed quarter of MPs. The international community even stood by and did nothing about the genocide of the Rohingya in 2017 because genocide didn't fit the narrative they chose to believe that my country was transitioning to democracy. They ignore the voices of human rights activists. They ignore the jailings of human rights activists. And they even ignore the increased military attacks on ethnic minorities in my country. So when the head of the Burmese military, Ko Mya Aye, decided to stage a coup, he had to consider two factors. How will the people of Burma react? And how will the international community react? And I have no doubt in my mind, after literally being allowed to get away with genocide, he calculated that the response from the international community would be weak, and this encouraged him. But he was wrong to underestimate the courage of people in Burma. They did not cower in fear as he hoped. He tried banning social media sites and even shut down the internet for the whole country, but protests continued. He arrested thousands, but protests continued. His police and soldiers shot peaceful protesters, but protests continued. Even today, he hasn't been able to consolidate power and take full control. People have been resisting in many ways possible. They bang pots and pans at night, they've gone on strike and refused to pay electricity bill because money goes to the military. They are boycotting military companies and demanding international action and support. People in Burma are sacrificing everything, including their lives, to win their freedom. The least the international community can do is everything they can to support these people, but they're not. Every weapon that the military uses against our people came from abroad, built by foreign technology or made with foreign equipment. And despite the fact that military has been breaking international law for decades, there is no global arms embargo on Burma. We need global arms embargo. Thank you. And, now that military control the government, they will have a lot of revenues coming from oil and gas. That need to be stopped with targeted sanctions. Because let's face it, they won't be using these money to build schools or hospitals. They will be using these money to buy more weapons and oppress our people. And most importantly, Mya Aye and his generals should be on trial at the International Criminal Court for crime against humanity and genocide. But even countries which claim to support human rights like the UK and the US refuse to support the referral of Burma to the ICC. And there are so many measures that international community can take: diplomatic, economic, legal, humanitarian. But the response from the international community has been frustratingly slow, while people are dying every day in Burma. In 2007, I traveled to the UK and started campaigning for the release of my father when he was arrested for the second time. And when I heard that he was sentenced to 65 years in prison, my thought was I would never see him again in my life. But he was released after serving only 5 years of his prison sentence. And he wasn't released because the military in Burma had a kind change of heart. He was released because of international pressure. And let's face it, that international pressure didn't happen because the governments around the world are so committed to human rights. It happened because they were also under pressure from people like you. Yes, of course, I know we will win our own freedom, but you play an important role in our democracy movement. And military in Burma is not immune to international pressure. So please urge and push your government to take effective action against the Burmese military and hold them accountable. And please follow organizations like Burma Campaign UK and Amnesty and support their campaigns. My hope and my dream is I really want to see Burma to have human rights and federal democracy. We want to live in a peaceful country with dignity, equality, and freedom. And I really want to go home safely and see my family again. And I really want my father and all political prisoners to come home and be with their families again. So please, we are asking you to do everything you can to help people in Burma. Thank you so much. Thank you.